Hello, everybody, and welcome back to This Day in History. Oh, glasses glare. We can't have that. Welcome, everybody. It's This Day in History. It is September 2nd, 2024. As you know, it's not about the year, but it's about the magic of the date. And what is today? Today is Labor Day. Uh, when I was growing up, Labor Day was that final hurrah of the summer. It was the last holiday of the summer before we had to go back to school. And growing up, I can remember always kind of dreading that day of going back to school, um, because you knew that it was about, you know 200 days of just blah 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 before you got to go back to having the summer off and having all that fun. I mean, well, that's not totally true, because I mean, you had winter breaks, you had spring break, but I mean, those paled in comparison to like having a whole 3 months off of school, and it was great. Um, and nowadays, I mean, well, okay, so where I'm from in Oregon City, growing up in Oregon City, we always had school the day after Labor Day, right? So we always started school Tuesday, which would be tomorrow, September 3rd. Um, they've since gone with the times now, I guess, because a lot of schools they start like a couple weeks before Labor Day, and then that puts them at getting out of school like very very early June, if not late May. But for us, it was like uh, in elementary school, it was like the middle of June is when we were out of school. I remember I graduated June 6th, 1993, and so our and June 6th was a Sunday, and so our last day in high school was June 4th. So like we got the high schoolers got a little, we got out, the week before the junior hires did. The junior hires got out about the same time, maybe a couple days before the elementary school kids. It's been 30 plus years, so I can't remember now, but that's what I remember. Now it seems like, when I was in grade school, our grade school went up to sixth grade, and then our junior high was 7, 8, 9, and then high school was 10, 11, 12. Even though ninth grade counted as high school, now it's like everyone else. That grade school goes up to fifth grade, and I believe junior high is sixth, seventh, and eighth, and then you have 9, 10, 11, 12 for high school now. I think Oregon City has finally gone up with the times with everybody else, but anyway, I am digressing. I've just spent the last 3 minutes reminiscing about going back to school, and you know, the memorable thing about going back to school is all the new smells. The fresh clothes. That it was just, you were inundated with everything. Just seemed so fresh and new, and then that wore out in about a week, and then you were back to the mundane. But let's get back into it. Right. So it's September 2nd. Our birthdays for September 2nd are 1928, Horace Silver. He was an American jazz pianist. He was a composer. He was a band leader. Um, he was known for uh, his performing the style known as hard bop in the 50s and 60s. 1948, um, American school teacher Krista Corrigan McAuliffe. She was the first civilian to be selected by NASA to go into space. Today is her birthday. She was born on this day in 1948. Tragically, she died in 1986 when the Challenger blew up. She and the whole crew, they were all lost. I remember that day. I was in the fifth grade. I actually had this little watch that had like an AM radio in it, and so I was able to pull out an earbud, and I was listening to it while my teacher was reading a story, and I was getting the breaking news on AM radio about the Challenger blowing up. And what they had found is that um, some air seals or something like that had iced over. I mean, it was a colder morning, and they didn't realize that uh, seals were broken because the condensation had iced over, and then it broke those seals. So like when they jettisoned, when they launched, um, for whatever reason, I mean, there's a lot of technical stuff to it, but that the failure of those seals had caused the explosion, and so the whole thing just blew up, and I believe it was a crew of 6, and all of them were 6 or 7, but all perished, and it was an unfortunate tragedy. 19 So that was 1948. Also on the same day, on this day, 1948, Terry Bradshaw, American football player, is also a commentator for football. He played for Pittsburgh Steelers, I believe. He was also, side note, if you're a Duck Dynasty fan, the family patriarch Phil, he and Terry were actually friends in college. They went to college together, and Phil probably could have gone to the NFL, but football interfered with his duck hunting. So his good friend Terry Bradshaw goes on to be an NFL football player, and Phil goes and creates this multi-million-dollar business of, that's duck hunting accessories. And so, I mean, they both seem to, fare well in life. 1952, Jimmy Connors is an American tennis player. He was born on this day. It was the year my mom was born. 1960, Eric Dickerson, an American football player, was born. 1965, on this day, Lennox Lewis, British boxer, he was born on this day, and his big claim to fame is that he actually fought Mike Tyson and beat Mike Tyson. I remember that. I remember when Mike Tyson lost to him, that was a big deal because, Tyson was a tough guy and practically undefeated. And I don't remember if it was Lennox Lewis that defeated him first, or if it was someone else. But, it's like, it all appearances looked like that Tyson was just going to smoke this guy. And from what I remember, Lewis wiped the floor with him. Also on this day, I love this woman. 1966, we see the birth of Salma Hayek, Mexican-American actress, director, and producer. Happy birthday, Salma. Mwah. Happy birthday, Lennox Lewis. Happy birthday, Terry Bradshaw, Eric Dickerson. So may you have blessed birthdays. So we go way back, way back in history for September 2nd. It's 31 BC, before Christ, right? So I don't do this before Common Era, blah. So it's 31 BC. Octavian, later known as Augustus Caesar, he wins a decisive victory over Mark Antony in the Battle of Actium. If you know a little bit of history there, Julius Caesar had just been murdered with the Ides of March, and Julius Caesar had declared himself a dictator for life. The Senate didn't like that. A bunch of senators had conspired to kill him. They took steps to forbid the Praetorian Guard, which would have been Caesar's secret, not so secret, but it was his personal bodyguard. They did not allow them to come into the Senate chambers because they said that weapons weren't allowed in the Senate chambers, so the guards had to stay outside. And so Julius Caesar is killed by the senators, where they're all they all stabbed him to death. Here's the thing: Octavian was his nephew, but Octavian was his declared heir to the Roman Empire, Julius Caesar's heir. Here's the thing: like, Octavian knew about the plot and did nothing about it. He waited for them to kill his uncle, and then he got his retribution, gathered up an army, and he knew who all the guilty actors were, and he hunted down all the senators, put them to death. Anyone who had an army, so the Romans have their own, they must have had several civil wars all throughout their history. But he gathers up his army. Mark Antony, who was loyal to Julius Caesar, flees to Egypt, who by that point, he has this is a weird love triangle. He has a love interest with Cleopatra. He is sworn to protect Cleopatra and her son. Her son is the son of Julius Caesar. She made the mistake of presenting him in front of Caesar and to Caesar in front of all of Rome, and which painted a target on that boy's back. He was actually about 10 years old when Octavian actually hunted him down. So this is his cousin, right? And this is Rome. This is how they do things. He didn't want the boy to ever come back and say, I have legitimate claim to this Roman Empire and I'm going to take it. No. And the thing is, like, that's not what he wanted. That's not what Cleopatra wanted. She just wanted to acknowledge that, you know, that was Julius Caesar's son. You guys can have Rome. He's going to be the king, the pharaoh of Egypt. You know, bygones be bygones. We will be partners with you, kind of thing. And with Octavian, as with most Roman emperors, you know, the world's not enough. So they had this clash. Mark Antony defending the boy, defending Cleopatra. He has this clash with Octavian. Octavian defeats him, and then he is going to try to humiliate Cleopatra. He wants to kill Cleopatra himself. He wants to kill the boy. The boy was sent into exile, but they eventually caught up with him, and they ended up, you know, killing him. He was 10 when they got him. But Cleopatra wouldn't give him the satisfaction, so she locked herself up, and as the legend goes, she had a basket of asps, which is a very poisonous snake, and then she allowed the asp to bite her, and she died of the snake poisoning, thus depriving Octavian his desire to humiliate her. So that was all in 31 BC. 1792, the September Massacres. It was a mass killing of prisoners in Paris. That's when it began. It began on this day. This was instigated by the belief that political prisoners would rise up and revolt, and they would join the counter-revolutionary movement. So, yeah, that's so good. 1898, Anglo-Egyptian forces under Major General Sir Horatio Herbert Kitchener, later would be known as Lord Kitchener. He defeated the Sudanese forces of Mahdist leader Abd Allah in the Battle of Omdurman. So I looked up what Mahdist was. Basically what it is, it's just a sect of Islam where they were of the belief that they were the next generation prophets of Islam. So they felt that they were carrying out Muhammad's work. As I'm given to understand. 1901, Republican vice president candidate Teddy Roosevelt gives his very famous speech where he is quoted as saying, speak softly and carry a big stick. You will go far. That big stick policy was central in his presidency when he became president. He was very much you let your actions speak for you. You don't need to talk a lot. You don't need to bluster. You don't need to throw out veiled threats or anything. You just, you speak a kind word and you leave it at that. And then you let your actions dictate to the rest of the world, who and what you really are. And he was very much like that. He was a little bit of a war hawk. He was the kind of person where he just didn't shy away from a fight. And if there was trouble in our hemisphere, he would rather deal with it now than later. So I liked him. I liked Teddy Roosevelt. I can't say that I really liked his. See, it's weird because the Roosevelts are related, right? Even Eleanor Roosevelt was related, right? So Eleanor Roosevelt was Teddy Roosevelt's niece. But Teddy and FDR were like fifth cousins or something like that. So they married in the family. So Ted Teddy Roosevelt was actually at that wedding, and he, you know, he shook FDR's hand, and he's like, call me Uncle Teddy, kind of thing. So, in 1945, it's on this day in 1945 that Ho Chi Minh declares Vietnam independent from France, and that's where they had their own little Vietnam War. France actually had their Vietnam War first, then they bowed out, and then we stepped in to help the South Vietnamese. At first, it was to help them, to bolster them, to help them fight their fight. But Kennedy didn't want to be there long term, and he certainly didn't want to fight their war for them. But Johnson had other ideas. So, 1945, World War II ends with the signing of the Japanese surrender. It's on the deck of the USS Missouri, and the reason why it was on the deck of the USS Missouri because the USS Missouri was one of those surviving battleships of Pearl Harbor. So. And she had survived the whole war, so it seemed only fitting that it was on her deck that the surrender would happen. Japanese Foreign Minister Shigemitsu Memoru and General Umezo Yoshijiro, they signed the formal surrender. I thought Emperor Hirohito actually signed it, but he didn't. He had a foreign minister and one of his generals go in there and sign the actual surrender and all that. 1973, English writer J.R.R. Tolkien dies at the age of 81. Of course, if you know Tolkien, you know his work. You know that he wrote The Hobbit in 1937. You know that he wrote Lord of the Rings, the Lord of the Rings series, which was a trilogy, in 1954, 1955. And on this day in 1998, Swiss Air Flight 111 crashes off the coast of Nova Scotia, killing everyone on board. There was 229 that were killed that day, and they found that it was faulty wires caused the flammable insulation of the plane to catch fire, and that's what caused the crash, unfortunately. 2016, the death of the first Uzbekistan president, Islam Karimov, was officially announced. And it's on this day in history. This is the featured event. It's the Great Fire of London. It's in 1666. It was a huge fire. It took out big chunk of the city, like a third of the city, I'm wanting to say. But it was an accidental fire that was in the house of the King's Baker. This fire raged on for 4 days. It destroyed 13,000 homes, as well as the old St. Paul's Cathedral. Destroyed a big chunk of the city. It's also said that because that cathedral was lost in the fire, it's also said that's why when a lot of people do their genealogy, they're going through their ancestral records, that they hit a stopping point at about that point in time, because when that church went up in flames, a lot of the birth records of people that would have preceded that were lost. So it's very rare that you're ever going to find someone who can actually trace their lineage, if they're European anyway, that they could trace their European lineage beyond 1666 because of that fire. I mean, it's like what would happen if the Mormons are real good about keeping records, the Catholics are really good about keeping birth records. It'd be like if their treasure troves had just caught on fire, and then that all those birth records, all those genealogy records, they'd be lost. So which is unfortunate. So that's it for this day in history for September 2nd, Labor Day. Enjoy your Labor Day. Have a great day. Be well, be blessed, take care, and we'll do this again tomorrow for September 3rd, which happens to be the birthday of my brother from another mother. So family friends that are closer, they're friends, they're more like they're family. So and I have one of those whose birthday is tomorrow. So take care, and we will talk to you again tomorrow, September 3rd. All right, bye.